order. Welcome to meeting number 4 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Pursuant to Standing Order 1064, the committee is meeting at the request of 4 members of the committee to discuss service standards for employment insurance claims. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person. Members who are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website, so you are aware the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. I would like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. If interpretation is lost, please inform me immediately and we will ensure interpretation is properly restored before resuming the proceedings. The raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen can be used at any time if you wish to speak or alert the chair. For members participating in committee, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in a committee room. Keep in mind the Board of Internal Economy's guidelines for mask use and health protocols. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize your name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the proceedings and verification officer. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the best we can to maintain consolidated order of speaking of all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. And just as a further clarification before we begin, I will be giving time because on another committee we had a situation where the translation was moving slower than the proceedings on the floor. So I will always ask if the translation has concluded and each member has heard what was being translated before we proceed to a vote or a discussion on a motion so that everybody knows what they're proceeding with. So with that, as I indicated, we received a standing order 106. The clerk then notified me, and so we called this meeting within the timeline allowed to consider the letter that was submitted. So at this time, I will call on Madame Chabot.
Bonjour et merci, Monsieur le Président.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, colleagues. We're still in January, so I will wish you an excellent 2022, hoping that we can soon meet in person. I raised my hand because the letter that was sent asking for this meeting, which I consider urgent or special. You did mention that the reason was that we're facing an urgent situation for many people getting employment insurance. And who are suffering the dramatic impacts of the delays in the processing of their requests. So I have a motion. Can I move it? Thank you. So it's a motion that you have all received. I will read it to make sure that we're all on the same page, and I will explain the context briefly after. So the motion is that the committee invite the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, who, as we know, is responsible for Service Canada, and the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion, who's responsible for Employment Insurance Program, for a period of 2 hours each to appear before the committee no later than February 4th, 2022, on the subject of processing times that exceed the goal of a 30-day service standard for responding to Canadian employment insurance claimants at Service Canada. So I think that the text of the motion is simple, engaging, but this invitation to me to ministers responsible for these files appears urgent. As I explained it, the situation is urgent. Citizens everywhere in Canada have been waiting for weeks and even months to receive their employment insurance, and this causes unimaginable and situations. We've heard from a lot of people, and I would say that the situation is chaotic, and it's not. This is nothing recent. The ministers have been informed, alerted by telephone calls, letters, media scrums. Everybody is calling for help. So as ministers responsible for those files, for those programs, they should come and answer our questions in view of knowing which measures are being taken to deal with this emergency. That seems appropriate. Some might say that we have important matters to deal with in committee. All of the motions that were moved for our agenda. But I think that next week we can do what needs to be done to deal with the other motions that are important, but I think they can wait. But for the employment insurance claimants who have been waiting for months, I think time has stopped, and it's time for us to do something, and hence the motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Long.
Good morning to everybody, all my colleagues, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. First and foremost, I want to say I appreciate Madame Chabot's contribution to HUMA. I mean, I've been on HUMA with her for 2 sessions now, and she is always very thoughtful and brings forth, very important and thought-provoking motions. I would, though, Chair, hearing Madame Chabot's motion, and giving it some thought, I would like to propose an amendment to that motion, if I could. And the reason, is it okay, Chair, I keep going here?
Yes.
The reason I would like to bring forth an amendment is for this. Madame Chabot wants to bring the minister to the committee to answer questions, but few things. We know certainly, you know, with Omicron, the Christmas period, December, claims, EI claims, there's always a surge at that point. And I think that what Madame Chabot wants to get at, and it's very important, but I think it's much, much better served by inviting officials to the committee. And the reason I say that is, look, we've been on this committee for several years, and of course ministers are very important to come, but to get to the root of this problem, Madame Chabot, through you, Chair, you know, officials can speak to much more technical issues, I think, that we need to get to the bottom of, you know, call center operations, staffing levels, how human resources are being deployed to resolve specific issues. So if it's okay, I think the motion would be much better with this amendment. And if the committee will indulge, I would like to read in an amendment, if that's okay, Chair.
Continue.
Amendment. That the officials appear in front of the committee for 1 hour on January 31st, 2022, on the subject of the processing times that exceed the goal of a 30-day service standard for responding to Canadian employee insurance claimants at Service Canada. Again, I think we'll be much better served by getting a lot more technical answers as to what's happening. I mean, look, all of our constituency offices get calls, but I think we're much better served by having the officials there. Thus, that's why I put forth the amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Madame Chabot, you have your hand up.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, pour réagir à l'amendement.
Yes, I would just like to react to Mr. Long's amendment. Can I go ahead?
Ben, Monsieur Long.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your kind words. Indeed, I'm always trying to make a useful contribution in order to help the people we represent. And in this case, well, this is an urgent situation. I understand the amendment, but I completely disagree, and I will explain why. Although Service Canada officials are important to respond to questions, ultimately, the bureaucratic apparatus is at the service of the political branch, and it is the politicians who are ultimately accountable. And so, therefore, I think there's an issue of accountability to be able to ask the ministers questions. And I don't at all agree that we should have officials before the minister, and I've never seen a situation like that. Having the minister first is always how we've done things. Of course, the officials are welcome, and the way it works is that when we invite ministers, the officials are there. So I think we could simply say that the minister is invited and officials will also be present. And that after the minister appears, then we can talk with the officials. But there are aspects that are political. And as parliamentarians, we are accountable. As parliamentarians, as MPs in each of our offices, we need to be accountable for the situation. And this has to do with the ministers. I believe that it is their responsibility to answer our questions and answer our questions on the directives given to officials about how to fix the situation. That is why I disagree. It's not that I don't want the officials to appear, but I do disagree that they should precede the minister's appearance.
Thank you, Madame Chabot. Madame Ferrada, and then Mr. Long has his hand up.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to support my colleague Mr. Long's amendment. There are some major issues right now. As Madame Chabot mentioned, I do not want to give the impression that we're minimizing the issue. It's an extremely important issue that has been raised in my writing. But I think Mr. Long's proposal is very balanced. And it's very balanced with regard to the committee business that's upcoming. And there are also other important issues that we need to get through. To be able to sit down with the department and get the answers, which at this time are much more technical. I think that would be a good way to start addressing this issue. And then afterward, we can see if we need to go farther. But this committee has many other issues that it needs to study. And I hope we'll be able to move on to that quickly, so I support my colleague's amendment.
Thank you, Madame Ferrada. We'll go to Mr. Long, and next on the speaking list will be Mr. Genereux, has his hand up, and then I will return to Madame Chabot, who still has her hand up. Mr. Long?
Thanks, Chair. I'll be very brief. The reason, Madame Chabot, through you, Chair, that I think it's much more important to have the officials here is because just of the technical and administrative answers that we need. And certainly I'm on the government side, it's no disrespect to the ministers at all, but we want to get to, because all of us are getting those calls, all of us. So I applaud Madame Chabot moving this forward, but we want to get quickly to the root of the problem. And the way you get to the root of the problem, look, we've been through this many, many times. All of us know it, is to talk to the officials that have that technical expertise and administrative expertise and can really answer the questions. And that's why I did the amendment. That's why I proposed the amendment for 1 hour. And then, after that, I'm hoping that we can get on with other committee business and look at all the other motions that other members from all parties have tabled. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Mr. Genereux?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good to see everybody here. Happy New Year from me. I just have to point out the hypocrisy that Mr. Long is trying to get across with his amendment here. He says no disrespect to the minister, but we don't want you here because you don't know the technical details of your file. So ultimately saying you're not in charge of your file, you don't get what's going on in your ministry, let's bring officials instead. So that being said, also want to in support of Madame Chabot's motion, which I believe is very well thought out and proposed, because it includes any other officials as well as the minister. So in committees that I've been a part of, generally the minister shows up, they bring 1 or 2 officials with them. When there are questions that are just so technical in nature that Mr. Long points out, they defer to the officials that are sitting right there. So I respectfully disagree with my colleague, Mr. Long, that it's only the officials that can answer these questions. The minister is responsible for their file. They're the ones to be held accountable, and that's what our committee is for. So I go back to Madame Chabot's original motion and would certainly be supporting it.
Thank you, Mr. Genereux. Madame Chabot, did you have your hand up again?
Oui.
Madame Chabot? Well, for everyone who's listening, and for everyone who I believe is a victim of this situation, I think to oppose a meeting with a minister, given the urgency of the situation, well, I would think twice before opposing such a meeting. I think the situation is extremely serious. And I think that as parliamentarians, we need to ensure that we are doing what we need to do. And I think the minister ought to be quite concerned. I think that if there are very technical questions, well, these officials will be there. Or we could have a meeting. We could have a meeting on Monday with one of the responsible ministers and her officials. And if there are overly technical, specific questions, then Service Canada officials can answer. That's not the issue. There may be technical issues, but the issue is political. I mean, I could take up the rest of the time allotted by telling you about the emergencies that our citizens are facing. As a parliamentarian, we're not responsible for doing what Service Canada is supposed to do. And yet, what are we supposed to tell people when they've been waiting for months? Yes, perhaps there might be a technical answer, like that there are more requests in December and January. The lockdown in Quebec, that there's more of a volume of requests, and that we may be more impacted in Quebec when it comes to identity theft. Yes, there are these technical context aspects, but there is nothing that can explain why there is a volume and a processing backlog that has reached such an incredibly high level, and which means that since the fall, some people have no income at all. Recently, I heard from someone who is waiting, who will not be able to pay the rent on Monday. And who is not able to pay other bills. Won't be able to pay alimony. And apparently Service Canada told him that he would be better off just finding a job and that his case wasn't a priority. Ultimately, this is clearly a political issue. And if we refuse to hear from a minister, I just don't get it. Yes, I agree that officials should come, but the minister should also be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Madame Chabot. I have next to speaking is Mr. Coutu and then Mr. Long. Mr. Coutu.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to thank the member for her motion. I will be supporting the amendment to the motion. I do agree with MP Chabot that this is an urgent, a serious issue, and I think everyone here would agree that it's urgent and it's a very serious matter. But it is also complex, and there's a very technical aspect to a ministry of this size and the amount of just the system, how large the system is and the complexity that goes into it. I think we would be better served to hear from the bureaucrats who could come in and explain the technical side of this issue, so we can determine, where the challenges are and go forward from that point. So I will be supporting MP Long's amendment. I think it's the right way to go. And again, this is a very serious issue, but there is a massive complexity to it as well. This is a large system, and you have to remember, yes, the minister is without a question responsible for this file, but it is the bureaucrats that look after the administration of the system. And let's go right to the source and figure out what within the system needs to be corrected. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Coutu. Mr. Long, you had your hand up. No? Madame Chabot, did you have your hand up again? Okay, seeing there's nobody wishing to speak on the amendment, I will ask for a vote on the amendment, and I will ask the clerk to read the amendment so everyone knows what they're voting on. Madame Clerk, do you have the amendment?
I am still waiting for a copy of the amendment. I need confirmation from Mr. Long. Right now, I have the amendment that the officials appear before the committee for 1 hour on January 31st, 2022 on the processing time. If Mr. Long can repeat the end of that, that'd be great, or send a copy to the chair, to the clerk. That'd be wonderful.
I'm happy. I'm happy to read it again, Chair, if that's what the committee wants.
Go ahead, read it into the record, Mr. Long, please.
Thank you. That the officials appear in front of the committee for 1 hour on January 31st, 2022, on the subject of the processing times that exceed the goal of a 30-day service standard for responding to Canadian employment insurance claimants at Service Canada.
Madame Zerillo, you have your hand up?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask about seconding on these motions and amendments. I don't think they need a seconder, but I just wanted to clarify.
Madam Clerk, clarify to Madame
A seconder
Zerillo.
is not required in committees.
Okay, and do we need to wait until we see this in 2 languages before it can move forward, this amendment?
No, the clerk can speak to it because it's an amendment during debate. It does not, translation services cover that, Madame Zerillo.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a few comments then, Mr. Chair, if I could share them with you and to the committee through you.
Certainly.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the fact that this is definitely a very serious situation, and there is a critical need for EI recipients to receive the entitlements that they're expecting. And I appreciate this debate about the political and the technical side of this. And my question is around the status of these issues. We did get some briefing notes and there hasn't been an update for a while. And I believe that having the ESDC come to the committee, they can answer the question that I have, which is when are people going to get their payments restored? That's the number one thing that is in my mind. So I can support the motion on an hour of technical staff coming up because there are competing priorities in this committee, and I want to get to as many of those priorities as possible. Many people in this community need support based on what happened during COVID. Some of the shortfalls have been there for a long time. So I want to mention, people living with disabilities, those who feel exploited in the workforce, those who have worked the front lines of this pandemic, and those who await serious investments in housing due to this housing crisis. And I know that people that elected me, people that elected this government across the country are counting on this committee to work effectively and quickly to inform the government on potential legislation that can lift people out of poverty, improve working conditions for many that worked on the front lines in this pandemic, and to fix the housing crisis. So I'm here to do that work.
Thank you, Madame Zerillo. Madame Kusi has your hand up. You have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and Happy New Year to everyone. It's so nice to get back to work here in the new year, and I just really wish everyone the best. And I also want to take a moment and thank administration for being here today and supporting the work that we're doing. It's greatly recognized and appreciated your presence here today. So thank you so much for doing that. I just wanted to actually agree with Ms. Zerillo that, yeah, this work absolutely has to be done on this committee in terms of getting to these other priorities, which Canadians have brought us here to do. I couldn't agree more. And there is no better way to do that than to bring those who are at the highest level and most responsible for this work being done, and that is the ministers. And there is no greater opportunity for direct accountability to our citizens that we've come here to represent than to have the ministers here. And so, I completely support what Ms. Zerillo said, that we are here. We want to get to work. This is a very outstanding, not in a good way, piece of issue that Madame Chabot has brought forward. And if we want to get to work for Canadians, and we want to really get that accountability for them that we all came to Ottawa virtually or in person for, the best way to do that is to get the ministers there, to get the answers direct from those who are ultimately held accountable for everything going on. And as my colleague, Mr. Genroux, did point out, within the motion, it does say that other individuals or other supports as required to answer those questions. But the best way to get accountability, to get answers, to get action is to have the ministers appear. And with that also, Mr. Chair, I'd like to see if we could get the motion in writing, please. That would be, I think a written copy would be helpful, just to very clearly perhaps outline which officials we can expect as I never like using the word bureaucrat as a former public official myself. But so what officials we can expect and the length of time for that. So I will leave my comments there. But again, thank you so much, Madame Chabot, for bringing this important issue to Canadians. And let's get the ministers here so that we can get answers at the highest levels for those whom we came here to represent, and then keep moving forward with this committee. Thank you.
Merci, Madame Kuzi.
Thank you, Madame Kuzi. Madame Chabot. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I take a while to unmute myself still. The former chair would often tell me off with my microphone. It was often not in the right place, but so far so good. Look, I haven't got the amendment before me, Mr. Long's amendment, but I understand the spirit of it. I am against it, however. I've explained why. I find it absolutely necessary for the responsible ministers to come and appear before our committee. It's not very hard, to come and testify, to come and answer our questions. I think it's very healthy, actually, democratically speaking. And a lot of people are calling on ministers on these issues. So I think I personally would find it an honor to answer those questions if I were in their shoes. Now, if I have the amendment, though, if I did have the amendment, then I could perhaps suggest a sub-amendment. But I haven't got the text just yet. I don't really know where to put my sub-amendment exactly, but I'll give you the spirit, the large idea, that on Monday, the 31st of January, we can ask Minister Gold, Minister who's responsible for Service Canada issues, and her officials during the second hour of that meeting. So I'll send you that in a written format, which will obviously be tagged onto the First Amendment. So could we please receive that First Amendment too? Thank you.
See, Madame.
Thank you, Madame Chabot.
Before we go to that, Mr. Ruff has his hand up. So, Mr. Ruff, you have the floor.
Thanks, Chair. My question very much aligns with Madame Chabot's. I'm just trying to understand the amendment and how it changes, or if there's any deletions from the original amendment or the original motion, i.e. that's the way I understood it, that he's proposing, Mr. Long, that these officials show up first and then the ministers would still be forthcoming. But I just want to get that clarity. What is the exact amendment? Because obviously, if that's not the case, if he's proposing we delete the original motion and a completely new motion, then obviously Madam Chabot's intervention, I think, what she's proposing as a sub-amendment. So just if we can get some clarity as asked on the full motion and the amendment included, I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
I'm going to, thank you, Mr. Ruff. I'm going to ask the clerk to read Mr. Long's amendment slowly into the record. Madam Clerk, do you have Mr. Long's amendment?
I do indeed. The amendment is, so in the original motion, it
Now,
said...
Madam Clerk, just so everybody's clear, Madam Clerk is going to read the first amendment, Mr. Long's amendment to the main motion. Madam Clerk.
Long's amendment is that the officials appear in front of the committee for 1 hour on January 31st, 2022 on the subject of processing times that exceed the goal of a 30-day service standard for responding to insurance claims at Service Canada. Oops, let me repeat that. Let me repeat that, please. That the officials appear in front of the committee for 1 hour on January 31st, 2022 on the subject of the processing times that exceed the goal of a 30-day service standard for responding to Canadian employment insurance claimants at Service Canada.
Okay, I'm going to call on Mr. Long, but you've heard Mr. Long's amendment. Mr. Long, you have a comment?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the member, the intent of the amendment was to have the officials appear instead of the minister for 1 hour. Second hour, we get to committee business and get on to the other motions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Seeing no other discussion, I will call for a vote on the first amendment, Mr. Long's amendment. And then, Clerk, am I correct on that?
Madam Chabot has her hand up. She raised her hand.
I think Chair called for the vote, though, before the hand went up, if I looked correctly. But
so the decision,
yes.
So the recorded vote is on the amendment of Mr. Long. Mr. Long.
Yes.
Mr. Coteau.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Van Bynen.
Yes.
Madame Martinez Ferrara.
Oui.
Mr. Genereux.
Sorry, no.
Ms. Kuzi.
Against.
Mr. Benson.
Against.
Mr. Ruff.
Against.
Madame Chabot.
Contre.
Ms. Cirillo.
Yes.
Five yeas, 6 nays.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will now, unless there's other discussion, move to vote on the main motion.
Chair, sorry, can you reread that vote again? Yeas and nays?
My apologies. It's 5 yeas, 6 nays.
I don't believe so. So that the amendment was voted down?
Five
It was a
nays, 6 yays.
It was a recorded.
Oh, there we go. Okay, 6 yays. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Mr. Ruff?
Yeah. I guess more of a point of order, Chair, is I'm a little confused here. Are we going to vote on the sub-amendment? Because there was a sub-amendment on the floor before the vote was called. So I thought we actually have to deal with the sub-amendment now before we deal with the actual amendment. So we got to stay within procedure here of the House of Commons. So if I could just get some clarity on that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ruff. I opened and Madame Chabot did not indicate again, but if Madame Chabot wants to return, I didn't.
C'est la même chose, Monsieur le Président.
I formally announced my sub-amendment. It's now been written out. I did ask whether we could receive Mr. Long's text. And then when I raised my hand, you said that the vote had already been called and we should go to the vote. So I do also have a question on procedure. Procedure is there really to serve us in a way and our wishes, and perhaps we weren't fast enough. But if you look at Mr. Long's amendment, it's just disqualified, if I may say so, the invitation or the presence of ministers. I can't believe that, actually. So that's why I wanted to bring that sub-amendment forward, so that on the 31st of January, Minister Gold and her officials can appear. So I would like my sub-amendment to be considered. Thank you.
Of course, Madame Chabot. It just wasn't clear to me at the time. I was going to go back to you. Madam Clerk, Madame Chabot had made a sub-amendment to the amendment. I'm correct?
I have actually just received the text 2 minutes ago, and she did make changes to it.
Changes to her sub-amendment?
To the amendment, from the text I received here, she made changes to the amendment of Mr. Long.
Okay, then can we be clear on the sub-amendment that Madame Chabot wants the committee to consider?
Well, the committee has made a decision on the amendment. It can rescind that decision.
What's the wish of the committee? No?
Chair, we voted, with respect, Chair, we voted on the amendment already.
Madame Clerk,
the committee can choose to rescind that decision of the vote on the amendment.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, on the same issue here.
Go ahead, was it Mr. Ruff?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Thanks, Chair. So yeah, my point is we got to follow the process. And again, I'm not the expert on the complete standing orders, but if a sub-amendment's tabled, we can't vote on something that's when we got to deal with the sub-amendment first before we can deal with the amendment. And Madam Chabot clearly stated, here's the sub-amendment to the amendment. So we can't vote on the amendment to the sub-amendment. The debate's been dealt with.
Madame Clerk, could you give an explanation on the procedural? The clerk called the vote on the amendment.
Yes, the chair did call for the amendment, and we did do a vote on the amendment. The committee can choose to rescind that decision and return back.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Was the sub-amendment presented prior to the vote?
Not that.
Yes, it was.
If it was presented, what was it?
Madame Clerk, was the sub-amendment presented before the vote?
Madame Chabot had raised her hand and spoke to a document. She did raise her hand before the vote was called, and she did submit the sub-amendment document for sub-amendment after the vote, well, probably immediately afterwards.
So therefore, it's out of order, Mr. Chair.
Madame Clerk?
I do have a document here that was submitted by Madame Chabot with texts that does edit the amendment from Mr. Long.
So procedurally, we should consider the sub-amendment, Madam Clerk?
we can rescind the decision from the amendment and return back to the sub-amendment, should it be the will of the committee.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order. Mr.
To rescind, it's a new that would be a new direction for the committee. The question was that the sub amendment come after Mr. Long's amendment, because if Mr. Long's amendment was first and we voted on it, which we have, then I don't know how we go backwards, only to vote on rescinding the actual motion. But we, at this point right now, I would suggest that the sub amendment is completely out of order. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
Madam Clerk, comment?
The committee can choose to rescind the amendment, the vote on the amendment, and return back to discuss the amendment and the sub-amendment from Madam Chabot.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. That doesn't really answer the question. I guess it comes to your decision, Mr. Chair. It seems to me that the motion that's currently being presented was presented after we voted on the original motion from Mr. Long. Therefore, it's out of order, and I think we should just proceed based on how we voted.
Mr. Chair, on this same point of order, I would offer suspend the meeting momentarily, go back to the recorded the record. It's clear. I clearly heard Madam Chabot introduce her sub-amendment verbally prior to any vote being called. So I would recommend, Chair, suspend, check the record, and you'll see that she introduced her sub-amendment prior to the vote being called. And that way we can put this to bed and make sure we're following procedure.
Thank you, Mr. Ruff. Before I go to Madame Chabot, I'm going to suspend for 3 minutes so that I can consult with the clerk. We will suspend for 3 minutes. Thank you. for clarification to the committee, I may not have heard totally Madame Chabot's discussion on wanting to move her sub-amendment. So to be clear and fair, the option before the committee is to rescind the vote on the amendment, and then we'll go to Madame Chabot's sub-amendment and let her introduce her sub-amendment to the amendment. If that's agreeable, if nobody is in disagreement in the committee, I see Mr. Ruff with his hand up. It would be my intention to ask the committee to.
J'avais demandé la parole avant, monsieur.
I raised my hand first.
Merci. J'avais demandé la parole.
So thank you. I had raised my hand before you made a decision that I agree with, because I wanted to indicate clearly for those who are listening to us and for those who will be watching us at a later time. And I said that in a spirit of collaboration, I was ready to propose a sub-amendment so that on January 31st, we hear the minister during the first hour and the officials during the second hour. So that's a compromise, which I think is fair between my motion and the amendment. So I have to read it. So I will find the text, so that the committee invite the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development and the officials of Service Canada for 1 hour on January 31st, 2025, on the subject of processing times that exceed the goal of a 30-day service standard for responding to Canadian employment insurance claimants at Service Canada.
The clerk to be clear, but I'm going to, Mr. Ruff had his hand up, and then Mr. Long. Mr. Ruff?
Thanks, Chair. No, I just wanted to make sure it was crystal clear on page 1006 in chapter 20 of the big green book, procedure and practice. When a sub-amendment is moved to an amendment, it is put to a vote first, unquote.
Thank you, Mr. Ruff. The confusion was, as chair, I was not clear on, I did not hear clearly or was not clear on Madame Chabot's intentions. So I went back and consulted on that. Mr. Long?
Thank you, Chair. I think the only thing I would say to that, and I know we're debating here about the sub-amendment, but I mean, I just want to make sure that we don't break precedent here. We voted on the amendment. And, you know, with the greatest respect, and I hold Madame Chabot in the highest regard, Madame Chabot voted. She voted on the amendment and didn't once say, well, hold on here, where's my sub-amendment? Not once. So that's where I'm struggling with this, is that, you know, certainly Madame Chabot vaguely mentioned a sub-amendment, but there was no real specifics to it. And then she voted on the amendment and never said another word. So that's what I'm struggling with there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Madame Chabot?
You're probably right. I didn't follow the, I wasn't alert enough to be clear on the procedures. I thought I had moved the sub-amendment, but you're probably right. I still have things to learn about procedure, but that doesn't change the fact that I had presented in due form a motion that you did not have in writing, as we didn't have in writing Mr. Long's motion.
And I think you will agree that given the urgency of the situation, I would hope that committee members would agree that we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I will go to the clerk to be clear, but I'm going to ask the committee to consider rescinding the vote it took so that we can then go back and vote on the sequence, which would be Madame Chabot's sub-amendment to Mr. Long's amendment, and then we will vote on Mr. Long's amendment, then we'll return to the main motion as amendment. So do I get agreement from the committee? Thumbs up on that, so I can get a sense from the committee. Okay.
I mean, Chair, I don't think we rescind. I mean, I think we did the vote with the greatest respect. We voted. So I personally say we've already voted on the amendment. So I'm not in favor of rescinding. Sorry.
Chair, I would just offer as a point of order, Mr. Ruff here, is that, look, we got to be careful. We're not going to start breaking our House of Commons procedure and practice here. And I get, first committee meeting back on a Friday, lots of things going on, amendments, sub-amendments. It does get confusing, but it's clear from the record she moved a sub-amendment, and I just think we should follow the common practices. If the will of the committee is to defeat that sub-amendment, then the vote will determine that. So let's just follow our procedures, and we'll get through this, and we can get done it, and we can get on to the business at hand next week based on the will of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Ruff. Before I go, I'm going to ask the clerk, Madam Clerk, the amendment that was voted on, is it in order?
The amendment of Mr. Long?
Yes.
It was in order.
The amendment of Mr. Long that was voted on, was it in order?
The text received was in order in terms of under the mandate and the work of the committee. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and was the vote in order as well?
Well, that is the decision of the chair and the committee, what she decides to do next.
I'm going to ask Madame Chabot if she would like to move, so we can clear this, a new motion in the same line, and then we can proceed to vote on it.
C'était ma question, si je pouvais déposer.
Yes, I was going to ask that, whether I could just table a new motion. Because if I can, then I will. But what I would like to say, and what I hope we all realize, is that for procedural reasons, we have just cheerfully refused to have a minister appear on an important issue. And my sub-amendment, at the time of the vote on Mr. Long's amendment, I did have my hand raised, and I was told that the vote had started. However, it's not black and white. There were mistakes in procedure. But then afterward, Mr. Chair, you did say that you were ready to consider this sub-amendment, but I understand there's no consensus, and yes, I'm ready to table a new motion. I would just need a few seconds.
Okay, thank you, Madame Chabot. We will then proceed with Madame Chabot introducing a new motion. Madame Chabot, whenever you are ready.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Rappel au règlement.
Debate two motions at a time. We need to go back to the motion on hand before going to another motion.
Madame Clerk. Sorry, I meant Madame Chabot would introduce a new amendment. A new amendment. Sorry, Madame Ferrata. It's an amendment. Madame Chabot, you have the opportunity to introduce a new amendment. Thank you, Madame Ferretto.
Vous me facilitez pas la tâche, là.
Oh, this is not making it any easier for me. But okay, I have a new amendment. Very well. Do I have a few moments? Now, the new amendment would be in the same spirit in its wording as what I had clearly said earlier, but perhaps not clearly enough. So my amendment, which is that on Monday, January 31st, the Minister of Families could appear for the first hour and Service Canada employees, officials for the second hour. Is that clear?
Thank you, Madame Chabot. I'm going to ask the clerk Madame Clerk, could you give us a direction so that everybody is clear on just where we're going here? Because we have an amendment by Mr. Long that was voted on, and now the committee is considering an amendment by Madame Chabot. Is Madame Chabot able to amend her motion?
Ms. Chabot cannot amend her motion, and her original motion is still being debated by the committee.
So is Madame Chabot's amendment that would be out of order?
She cannot amend, a member cannot amend their own motion.
Okay, so then to proceed is Madame Chabot, can she proceed by amending, doing an amendment to the amendment of Mr. Long?
The amendment of Mr. Long, there was a vote on it and it was decided. So committee's returning back to the debate of the main motion, which is the original motion that was moved by Madame Chabot.
Okay, well, the committee has heard the procedural direction, Madame Chabot. It does not appear that you can move an amendment to your motion. Mr. Ruff?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So got that Madame Chabot can't do it. So it's clear.
Quelqu'un d'autre peut le faire?
Can someone else do it?
Obviously the amendment's been passed. You're not rescinding that. And again, I do express my concern about us, misusing procedure. However, when we go back to the original motion now to vote on that, I'd be confused because, based on the amendment, I don't know how I guess we can still do it. It's just because there's no timeline in the original motion. If we pass that, the minister still would be forthcoming if we pass the original motion, if I understand that right. But if not, I'd just like some clarity on that procedurally as we debate and put a vote on the main motion, because if not, I'm more than willing to move the sub-amendment that Madame Chabot has proposed to the committee.
Madame Clerk, I believe any other member of the committee could move an amendment, and it would be voted on. But as was indicated, a mover of a motion cannot amend their motion. So, Mr. Ruff, if you want to make a similar amendment.
Thanks, Chair. I'm willing to make that amendment. I'm just still trying to understand the procedurally. We vote on the main motion, or if we do just vote on the main motion and it passes, because there's no specific timelines directed in that, if I remember from what was emailed out to everybody. It is no later than February 4th for those ministers to appear. Bottom line is what my assumption is we actually get exactly what Madame Chabot wants, and we get what Mr. Long wants. We get the officials appearing here on Monday. We get then the ministers appearing no later than the 4th. So I'm just saying both could work here, and we can get the amendment that's already passed, and we can get to the original motion adopted still. If that isn't the case, if I'm misinterpreting and misunderstand that incorrectly, then I am willing to move the sub-amendment or the new amendment to the amendment, I guess sub-amendment or the amendment to the main motion, whatever it is, to make this happen to go forward. I guess it's not a sub-amendment to the amendment because it's already voted on. It would be an amendment to the main motion. But I actually think the main motion still, it's still in order and there's nothing, it doesn't take away from the amendment that was made.
Point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Madame Martinez Ferrada. Mr. Chair, I think like many other members, I am quite confused. Could we ask the clerk to read the amended motion as adopted with the amendment so we can start again from scratch?
That has been voted with the amendment. So then we can proceed and see if other members want to present an amendment to the motion already adopted with the amendment. And then we can move forward and get everybody on the same page. Would that make sense?
Thank you, Madame Ferrata. That's where I was going to go. We do have an amendment that was voted on and carried. I'm going to ask the clerk to read the motion, as amended, Madame Clerk, and take it slowly.
Mr. Chair, just my clarification. The vote on the amendment of Mr. Long was 5 yeas, 6 nays. It was defeated, the amendment of Mr. Long, and as such, we're returning back to the original motion of Madam
Point
Chabot.
of order,
Point of
Mr.
order,
Chair.
point of order, Chair.
Point
It
of
was
order.
not defeated.
Yeah, it was not defeated.
No.
Madame Clerk, there seems to be a confusion on the vote.
It was 6-5.
I have 5 yeas, 6 nays.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. We've seen these numbers switch back and forth like 3 or 4 times now. I am 100% clear that it was 6 in favor and 5 against. 100% clear. So I don't know where this new number is coming from.
In the recorded division.
Madame, can you reread with respect what you have for votes? Can you reread that?
I have Mr. Long, yay. Mr. Coteau, yay. Mr. Collins, yay. Mr. Van Bynen, yay. Madame Martinez Ferrata, yay. Mr. Jenneru, nay. Ms. Kuzi, nay. Mr. Benson, nay. Mr. Ruff, nay. Madame Chabot, nay. Madame Zerillo, nay.
No, Madame Zerillo, I believe, voted yay. I believe. Hello?
I'm going to suspend for a moment to I consult. confirm your vote on the amendment that was voted on? Was it nay or yay?
Chair Morrissey, I said the word yes.
That's what I thought I had
on
heard
my
at the
vote.
time. Okay.
I do have some comments, but I'll wait until we decide what we're doing here.
Therefore, 6 yeas, 5 nays for the amendment. So the amendment did pass. If you give me a moment, I could read the motion as amended.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
So the motion as amended is that the officials appear in front of the committee for 1 hour on January 31st, 2022 on the subject of the processing times that exceed the goal of a 30-day service standard for responding to Canadian employment insurance claimants at Service Canada. That is the motion as amended.
The committee members have heard the motion as amended. Is there any further debate or any other discussion, Mr. Ruff?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As Madam Chabot had introduced earlier, but she's inadmissible to make that amendment to the now amended motion, I so move her what she read into the record.
Could we have that repeated, Mr. Ruff or Madam Clerk? Do we have that?
If the clerk could do it, it would make my life easier because again, I'm not writing everything down here as we're in committee.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do you have?
I would ask that Mr. Ruff repeats his amendment, please.
Mr. Ruff?
Yeah, Chair. So I so move what Madam Chabot had already introduced as a potential amendment to the amended motion.
So, Madam Clerk, when you have the clarification, to read slowly into the record so committee members know what we're discussing and possibly voting on.
I'm looking for clarification from the committee as per the.
So, yes, Chair, I'll interject and Madam Chabot can intervene if I'm getting this wrong, that Minister Gold appear for 1 hour on Monday the 31st and officials for the 2nd hour.
Okay, it's clear. Thank you, Mr. Ruff. So, Madam Clerk, could you read that back when you have it to the committee? Madame Ferrata, you have a comment while we're waiting for the clerk to clarify?
Well, I can certainly wait for the clerk to read us the amendment once more. I was just going to comment on that amendment, actually.
So the amendment as proposed was that officials appear in front of the committee for 1 hour on January 31st, 2022, and also public servants of Service Canada on January 31st, 2022 for another hour on the subject of processing times that exceed the goal of a 30-day service standards for responding to Canadian employment insurance claimants at Service Canada.
Chair, could that just be repeated one more time, please?
That officials appear in front of the committee for 1 hour on January 31st, 2022, and officials for the and public servants of Service Canada on January 30 for another hour on the subject of processing times that exceed the 30-day service standards for responding to Canadian employment insurance claimants at Service Canada.
Chair, that isn't what I moved. I specifically moved that the minister appear for 1 hour on Monday the 31st and officials for the second hour.
Could Mr. Ruff please kindly submit that in writing to the committee, please?
Absolutely. Give me a moment.
Okay, while Mr. Ruff is doing that, because yes, there seems to be some confusion between what's being recorded and what Mr. Ruff said. I will go to Madame Ferrada and then Madame Zarello. Do you want to talk on something or wait until we got clarification on the exact amendment that Mr. Ruff is putting forward?
Oui, merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I understand what my colleague, Mrs. Chabot, presented and what Mr. Ruff is also bringing forward. I want to come back on what was tabled as an amendment, which was actually accepted by the members of this committee. And that was to also talk about committee business during the next meeting, because there are a lot of other studies that need to be looked at, whether it's housing or everything that's to do with health, with care, with benefits that are sent to persons with disabilities, whether it's the labor shortage. There are many different issues that need to be studied. And so I think we should have officials come testify or appear for an hour. For another hour, I think that would be a good balance, you know, to give our committee the opportunity to look at other issues and to see, you know, what the next formal study should be. And I really hope that next Monday we will have time to do that. That's why I won't be able to support my colleague's amendment.
Thank you, Madame Ferrada. I'm Madame Zarello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will wait to see what the decision is, but I just wanted to bring up that I've seen in the past many things that have happened in committee, not just this committee and other committees that I've watched that have been outside of the procedure book or have been out of order. For example, I've seen in this HUMA committee in the past where a mover of a motion has amended the motion and it has been accepted even though it wasn't in order, and it moved forward. And I think it just shows, you know, how difficult it is for group decision-making tables to question things that they know are incorrect or out of order. On this one, I'm not going to say that I know the book. It's right here and I don't have the time to look, but when a motion gets moved to the floor, an amendment happens, the amendment gets dealt with before the motion. If there's a sub-amendment, that would get dealt with. But I've never seen a time when a motion comes to the floor, an amendment comes, and I'm not disputing that there wasn't a sub-amendment that wasn't addressed, but that then we go back and on that main motion that we haven't voted on yet, we get another sub-amendment. I just have to say that I'm uncomfortable with the on-the-fly stuff that we're doing right now. And I think that's why we ask that things come to the committee within 48 hours for true consideration. And I'll just revisit the fact that this is a very serious situation. There's critical need for EI recipients to receive their entitlements when they expect them, and that the technical and potentially fraudulent problems with the distributions must be resolved immediately. It is my understanding from briefing notes that the ESDC is aware of this, has begun implementation, and I quote, have committed to support clients on a priority basis when their benefits have been impacted as a result of identity theft. And I'll also note for people that might be watching this meeting that are wondering why we're going back and forth in procedural when they haven't received payments for months, that please, if you are a victim of this fraud, please make a phone call to the police, to the Canada Anti-Fraud Centre, to the 2 national credit union bureaus, including Equifax and TransUnion, and also to your banks and creditors to report the fraud. And I will also reiterate at this point, it seems reasonable to me to get answers to the questions of how to get people their benefits they're entitled to, and that we do have competing priorities in this committee that I'd like to get to. Thank you.
Thank you, Madame Zarrillo, Madame Chabot, and then Madame Kusi has her hand up.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, if we want to talk about procedure and what's going on today, we could also go back on the video and have a look there. But anyways, I would like to say that I'm against what was just said. On the 31st of January, which is going to be our very first regular meeting, I think it will be a terrible thing if we cannot allocate an hour to the studies that have been brought forward by many different parties, but by all the parties. I am very, very tired, and I'm very worried about those claimants who have waited for weeks, months even, for those benefits, and they haven't received any money. So, you know, the world will still go round, even if we can't speak about our emotions for an hour on Monday. But if we don't want to talk about that, well then, because we think other issues are more important, then we should add a further hour to our meeting so that we can talk about these things. You know, there are various ways to do things. Nothing should be more urgent than having to listen to a minister who deals with a portfolio where citizens are waiting on us.
Thank you, Madame Chabot. Madame Kusi?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to make sure that all committee members are clear that now that we have voted on the amendment, the original motion is dismissed with. So we're back to the original motion no longer exists now that we have the amendment. So I want to make sure that all members are clear on that. And I also want to say to people who are watching, anyone who is watching out there, if you are a victim as well, then you will want your member of parliament to ensure that they get the ministers here, the people who are at the highest level, to ensure to have these responses for you as the citizen, as the victim. Make sure, demand that your member of parliament is calling for the ministers. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madame Kusi. Madame Chabot, your hand is up. Madame Chabot, do you want to speak? No? Okay. With that, I'm going to ask the clerk then to read Mr. Ruff's. So we got it right. Is it a sub amendment or amendment? Madam Clerk?
It's an amendment on the motion that was amended.
As amended. Okay. So we're
right
clear.
Now, Mr. Ruff has moved the amendment that the committee invite the Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development to appear for 1 hour before officials for 1 hour on January 31st, 2022 on the subject of the processing times that exceed the goal of a 30-day service standard for responding to Canadian employment insurance claimants at Services Canada.
Mr. Ruff? Is it okay? Good. Okay, so that we're all clear now again. We're voting on amendment to the motion as amended. So again, Madam Clerk, read it one more time and then we're going to a vote.
That the committee invite the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development to appear for 1 hour before officials for 1 hour on January 31st, 2022 on the subject of the processing times that exceed the goal of a 30-day service standard for responding to Canadian employment insurance claimants at Service Canada.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll ask for a recorded vote.
Mr. Long.
Against.
Mr. Coteau.
Against.
Mr. Collins.
Opposed.
Mr. Van Bynen.
Against.
Madame Martine Ferreira.
Contre.
Mr. Genereux.
In favor.
Ms. Kuzi.
In favor.
Mr. Benson.
In favor.
Mr. Ruff.
In favor.
Madame Chabot.
Je sais qu'on est en vote. J'avais levé ma main avant le vote, Monsieur le Président. Ce que vous nous avez lu comme motion ne semble pas indiquer que les fonctionnaires seront là dans la deuxième heure. Je veux juste m'en assurer.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Madame Chabot, there's no translation.
There's no translation. We did not get that.
Do you hear me now?
Je veux m'assurer.
Je voulais m'assurer. I wanted to make sure because the amendment that was moved was that the Minister of Families be there January 31st for an hour, followed by 1 hour with the officials. I just want to make sure that the officials will be there for the second hour. And I had raised my hand before the vote started.
Read twice. It was clear what we're voting on. So we'll continue with the vote, Madam Clerk.
Madame Chabot.
Vous appelez mon vote. Je serai en faveur.
Madame Zarrillo.
No.
Five yeas, 5 pour, 6 nays, 6 contre.
The motion, this amendment was defeated. We will now proceed to a vote on the motion as amended. A recorded vote, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Long.
Yes.
Mr. Coteau.
In favor.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Van Bynen.
Yes.
Madame Martine Ferreira.
Oui.
Mr. Genereux.
Sorry, we're against.
Ms. Kuzi.
Against.
Mr. Benson.
Against.
Mr. Ruff.
Against.
Madame Chabot.
Pardon, mon son était fermé en faveur.
En faveur?
Oui, pour.
Madame Zarrillo.
Can I please have the motion read?
Est-ce que vous pouvez me...
Madam Clerk, would you, so we're clear, read it one more time? I just want everybody to be clear. For Madame Zarrillo.
That the officials appear in front of the committee for 1 hour on January 31st, 2022 on the subject of the processing times that exceed the goal of a 30-day service standard for responding to Canadian employment insurance claimants at Service Canada.
And can I get clarity on who's in the officials bucket?
No, that is not in the motion, Madame Zarrillo.
All right.
That will be determined by the committee.
Okay, so I was following this process where we had a motion on the floor, then we had a sub-amendment, then we had a sub-amendment. The sub-amendment wasn't considered, but the sub-amendment was considered. We voted on it. Then we went back to the original motion, which we didn't vote on, but there was another sub-amendment that came to it. So the sub-amendment, I thought that we voted on. So I'm just wondering where this motion came from. And I'm just asking for clarity because I want to make sure I know exactly what I'm voting on.
Well, we're in the middle of a vote, Madame Zarrillo. It was read several times, and it is now prudent that the committee continue its finish its vote.
Chair? Maybe I'm not allowed to.
No, we're committee. We're in the middle of a vote. Motion was read. It was made clear to everybody. Madam Clerk, could you finish the vote?
Madame Zarrillo?
Yeah, no. My answer is no. My vote is no.
Six yeas, 6 pour, 5 nays, 5 contre.
The main motion as amended was then carried. Mr. Long, you had your hand up, and then Madame Chabot.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to move that the committee do now adjourn.
Committee? There's been a motion to adjourn. Those in favor?
Monsieur le Président, j'avais levé.
Mr. Chair, I had raised my hand.
In and out in the hands.
Je veux voter contre. Bon, je vais inscrire mon vote contre.
Madame Clerk, did we not conclude the vote?
I provided the fact that it was 6 yeas and the vote was concluded. I received all
the vote
the
was concluded, Madame Chabot. The vote was concluded. I'll go back to Mr. Long and then Madame.
Order. I believe the vote count there was wrong. It was 6.
I had raised my hand before.
That vote was also recorded incorrectly.
No, it wasn't.
Madame Clerk, I heard Madame Chabot vote. What was Madame Chabot's vote, Madame Clerk?
I recorded Madame Chabot as a yay pour.
That's what I heard as well. The vote was carried, and we had moved on.
Monsieur le Président.
But Mr. Chair, in the procedure, I can recall my vote, not everybody else's. I recall my vote, and now I am voting against it.
Under the procedures?
Oui, à ma connaissance.
Madame.
As far as I know, yes.
You would have to ask the committee if they have unanimous consent of the members themselves. Use
Okay,
of members
thank
is
you.
required.
Does the committee give unanimous consent for Madame Chabot to change her recorded vote?
No.
We do not have unanimous consent. We will then move to Mr. Long. You had your hand up.
Sorry, I hope.
I'm good, Chair.
Okay. Madame Zarillo?
Mr. Chair, I raised my hand not to be against the unanimous consent, but to say if Madame Chabot is changing her vote, then I would also appreciate
Madame
the opportunity.
Zarillo, it just takes one individual to deny unanimous consent. There was no unanimous consent, so the vote is as recorded. Madame Chabot, before we move to the vote on adjournment.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, then I would also like to make the same request that Madame Chabot made to revoke my vote.
Do we have unanimous consent?
No.
Yeah. No. Chair, if I may, I think if I might interject here, I think what might have happened was that maybe one member voted one way and meant the other, but another member voted one way and meant the other. So in the end, it's still a wash, if you will, even though I know this sounds a little, even though the recorded votes maybe, but it still comes out the same. So I think we just need to move on and deal with the motion to adjourn. Thank you, Chair.
We have motion to adjourn. All those in favor? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, committee members. Look forward to seeing you on Monday. Merci beaucoup.